Bro, we're right in the middle of the offseason and the Washington Commanders are not playing around. Adam Peters keeps moving pieces, the draft is coming in fast, and the rumor mill is wild enough that you almost have to close your eyes. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, is this really happening? Fam, a lot of you have been locked in for weeks, tracking every move, every signing, every rumor, every combine breakdown, and today, we are going to pull all of that together into one video that is going to leave your head spinning and your heart racing because this is 2026. This is a new era for the Commanders. And man, the news we have today is exactly the kind of conversation we need to be having. Today on the channel, we're breaking down 3 stories that are all over the Commanders community and that actually matter for what is about to go down over the next few weeks. First, a strategic look at some low-cost options in the secondary that Adam Peters could be eyeing. Then, a very real talk about the draft and why one of the gems of the 2026 wide receiver class might be falling to the Commanders' range for all the wrong reasons. And to close it out, fam, the thing everybody in Washington wants to talk about are the Commanders making a move for Budda Baker in a trade that would completely change the face of this defense. Buckle up because this one hits hard. Drop a like before we even get into it because I already know that once you are done with this video, you are going to want to share it. Let's roll. News 1, 3 low-cost free agents the Commanders need to sign. Okay, let's start with the part of the offseason that does not get the same hype as a blockbuster trade, but in reality can be just as important when you are building out a roster. Low-cost signings. Joanne Coley dropped a breakdown this week on 3 free agents the Commanders should add without burning much capital. And listen, these are not the names that are going to show up in some trending topic on Twitter, but they deserve a serious conversation because they tell you a lot about Adam Peters' philosophy and where this franchise is heading. The first name is Ashton Davis, safety, former Jet, most recently with the Dolphins, where Davis played 15 games last season and put up 65 tackles, 1 interception, and 1 forced fumble. The idea is to bring Davis in at around $2 million. $2 million, fam. That is basically nothing in the NFL right now. And what I like about Davis is that this is not a player who is just out there taking up space. Before landing in Miami, Davis stacked up 8 interceptions, 154 tackles, and 3 forced fumbles in 69 games with the Jets. There is starter experience, there is ball hawk instinct, and there is that juice you want from somebody who gives you real depth in the secondary. Is this the final answer for the safety room? No. But at $2 million, this is exactly the kind of smart move that tells you how Peters builds. Context matters here. The Commanders just signed Nick Cross, and that locks down one of the 2 starting safety spots for next season. But that second spot, bro, that is where the problem is. Will Harris and Quan Martin battling for that job does not exactly inspire Olympic-level confidence. Davis would jump right into that fight as somebody who has already shown the ability to function as a starter in this league. We are not talking about a raw project. We are talking about somebody who knows the league, understands schemes, and can contribute from day one. The second name in the breakdown is Jack Jones, cornerback, and this name, fam, is going to hit Commanders fans in a specific way in 2025. Jones came up with an overtime interception against Washington that literally ended the game. This dude ended us. And now the idea is to sign that same player. The NFL has a twisted sense of humor. Bro, but for real, Jones started all 17 games for the Dolphins and recorded 77 tackles, physical, playmaker, affordable, and the Commanders, especially after moving on from Marshawn Lattimore, need to add bodies to the cornerback room who can actually compete for and potentially win a starting job. The third name is Martin Emerson. This is where the idea gets more interesting strategically, but also way riskier. Emerson was viewed as one of the most promising young corners in the league when healthy with the Browns. Size, length, lockdown instincts, but Emerson tore the Achilles in training camp back in 2024 and missed the entire 2025 season. Basically 2 years without real game action. The angle for Peters here would be a 1-year prove-it deal where Emerson shows up starving with all the pressure to prove that Emerson could still be that dude, and Washington gets the upside at a bargain price. Honestly, this is what I like about the whole breakdown. All three players share something in common. Real value pieces available at discount prices because there is some kind of risk or uncertainty attached. Davis is solid but not flashy. Jones is physical but still hunting for that long-term contract. Emerson is trying to come back from a serious injury. But fam, this is exactly how you build out a winning roster when you are not one of those teams throwing cash around like you printed in the basement. Fines, market inefficiencies, hungry players, and right now the Commanders' secondary badly needs that kind of depth. Now, to keep it real, none of these three actually fixes Washington's core problem in the secondary. Davis can be a strong backup. Jones can battle for the nickel job or even push for a starting outside spot. Emerson, if the Achilles holds up, could be the steal of the year. But the truth is the Commanders still have a massive need for real impact at safety. And that leads straight in to the next two stories in this video. The first one is about the draft, and the second one is something that is going to put the entire Commanders community in full-blown hype mode. But first, the draft, because there is a real conversation around one receiver whose situation is getting messy and directly affects Washington's strategy with pick 7. Fam, before we keep going, hit that like button if you have already gotten some value out of this breakdown. It costs nothing and helps the channel a ton. Let's get into story number 2. News 2. Commanders need to stay away from Jordan Tyson in the draft. Okay, bro. This is where the draft talk gets serious. Let me be straight with you from the jump. Jordan Tyson was one of the most exciting wide receivers in the 2026 class. Pure explosiveness after the catch ability that had you sitting there with your jaw on the floor, and a natural feel for creating separation that scouts were raving about on paper. This is exactly the kind of receiver a team like Washington, which desperately needs a weapon opposite Terry McLaurin, should be looking at very seriously. But then this week's news hit, and fam, Tyson's situation is getting messy in a way the Commanders just cannot ignore. Draft expert Dane Brugler, one of the most respected voices in this space, went on the Athletic Football Show and laid it out. Tyson's hamstring has not improved during the draft process. Not only that, the injury has actually gotten worse during training. And on top of that, Tyson's probably not going to participate in Arizona State's Pro Day. Bro, the Pro Day. That is basically a prospect's last big chance to show teams that everything is good, that there is real movement, that the receiver can run routes at full speed, and Tyson is going to miss it. Tyson's injury history over the last year is ugly. Tyson hurt the hamstring on October 18th against Texas Tech, came back on November 22nd against Colorado, then got hurt again, and the second one was reported as a different hamstring injury. That second injury, fam, is the one that just will not heal. We are at the end of March 2026, and that second hamstring issue is still not right. That is basically 4 straight months of not being able to train at 100%. 4 months where there was no chance to show anything at the combine, no chance to show anything at the pro day, and the only option left is trying to run a couple of private routes for teams before the draft. And listen, the talent with Tyson is real. I have watched the tape. There is something different there. But bro, we are talking about pick 7 in the first round of the NFL draft. This is not a 5th. This is not a 6th. This is pick 7. And the Commanders only have 6 total picks in this draft, with just 2 inside the top 100. There is absolutely no room for a big miss there. Josh Taylor from Sporting News nailed it. The Commanders simply cannot afford to swing on a high-risk prospect at that spot in the draft. And I am with that. The franchise is in win-now mode. Jaden Daniels is developing at a pace we have not seen in this organization in decades. The window to build around Daniels is, right now, not 2 or 3 years down the line when a first-round receiver maybe finally shakes off some chronic hamstring issue. The hamstring in particular is one of those injuries that can become a long-term problem for receivers. It is not like an ankle or even a knee, where most of the time the rehab protocols are defined and predictable. Hamstrings can pop again. Hamstrings can sap your burst, mess with your acceleration, mess with your ability to plant and cut. That is literally everything that makes a high-end receiver special. And when you have a hamstring that goes twice in one college season and is still an issue 4 months later, That is not just a red flag, that is a full-on siren. So what should the Commanders do with pick 7 if receiver is the move? The answer in this breakdown is pretty clear. Carnell Tate, the Ohio State wideout. Tate is 21, stands at 6 feet 3, around 195 pounds, and is one of the most polished route runners in this entire class. Tate does not have the same pure vertical upside Tyson flashes at Tyson's absolute peak, but Tate has something that is worth gold in a modern offensive coordinator system: consistency, polish, and the ability to read coverages and adjust routes on the fly. That type of receiver is a perfect fit for what Jaden Daniels needs, which is not just a big play merchant, but a player Daniels can trust on third downs, in critical situations, in those moments where the drive either keeps going or dies right there. And fam, if the Commanders can land Carnell Tate in the draft and also close the Brandon Ayuk deal that has been floating around for weeks, Washington's wide receiver room goes from obvious weakness to legit strength. McLaurin, Ayuk, Tate, that is a wide receiver core that gives Jaden Daniels answers at every level of the field. That is the kind of build that gives Washington a real shot to go toe-to-toe with Philadelphia in the NFC East. Okay, bro, that is the draft conversation. Now is where this video goes to another level, because what comes next is not just another low-cost pickup or a draft debate. What comes next is a big name, an aggressive proposal, and the question every Commanders fan has been asking this week: BUDDA Baker in burgundy and gold. Fam, let's go. News 3, BUDDA Baker blockbuster trade. Commanders and the Cardinals elite safety. Bro, let's be very clear about what we are actually talking about here. BUDDA Baker. 8 Pro Bowls, 7 straight, 4 All-Pro nods. One of the most recognizable, most impactful, and most dangerous safeties of this entire NFL generation. And the idea that is floating around this week, thanks to Winston Wilcox's piece on Fansided, is that the Washington Commanders should make a blockbuster move to trade for Baker from the Arizona Cardinals. Fam, if this actually happens, and I am saying if, because right now it is still a prediction, not a done deal, but if it does happen, we are talking about one of the most seismic moves this franchise has made in years. Let me lay out the full picture so it is clear why this makes so much sense from Washington's side. The Commanders signed Nick Cross to be one of the starting safeties. Cross is solid, young, and still has plenty of upside. But that second safety spot, fam, is a mess. Will Harris and Quan Martin battling for that job. Nothing personal against those players, but neither one looks like the type of safety you want as the other pillar of a defense that expects to be playing in the NFC Championship mix. And then there is Baker, a generational talent at that position, potentially available via trade from a Cardinals organization that is in full rebuild mode and needs draft picks more than pricey veterans. It makes sense for Arizona, too. The Cardinals are building for the long term with Kyler Murray and a young core carrying a 30-year-old safety with a big cap hit in 2026 and 2027 is not exactly the #1 priority when the roster is still being torn down and rebuilt. If the Cardinals can flip Baker for draft capital right now before Baker hits free agency after the 2027 season, that is exactly the kind of forward-thinking move a smart front office makes. Turn one veteran into multiple picks, then use those picks to keep stacking youth. Now let's talk about Baker the player, because fam, I have to keep it real. 2025 was not Baker's best year in coverage. PFF slapped a 35.7 coverage grade on Baker, and that is rough. That is a number you have to acknowledge and not just sweep under the rug. But listen, that same system gave Baker a career-high 74.7 coverage grade just 1 year earlier. Is that a drop-off? Yes. Is that a washed player? Absolutely not. One down year does not erase 8 Pro Bowls and a career full of high-impact snaps. And in pass rush and run defense, Baker was still elite. 83.8 in pass rush, 76.6 in run defense. Those numbers do not lie. That is still a safety who can change the entire flow of a game against the run and get after the quarterback when you send Baker on a blitz. That, fam, is exactly what this Commanders defense needs to add: a safety who can roll down into the box and wreck run plays, who can be a nightmare for quarterbacks on designed pressures, and whose presence on the back end forces offensive coordinators to adjust how they game plan Washington. Durante Jones, Washington's defensive coordinator, has built a system that feeds off aggression and versatility from the safety spot. Baker, at full strength, is literally the prototype for that system. A player you can move around and weaponize in a bunch of different ways. And bro, we have to talk about the intangibles nobody is highlighting enough. Leadership. BUDDA Baker has 8 years in the league as one of the most respected safeties out there. Baker walks into that Commanders defensive huddle, and the entire locker room dynamic changes on day one. The standard jumps, the young guys in that secondary, Emmanuel Forbes, any new corners. Everybody in that room, they look at Baker and get a masterclass in what elite professionalism looks like. That will never show up in a box score, but it is real and it matters. What about the cap hit? The Commanders are sitting on $49.3 million in cap space. Baker's cap hits in 2026 and 2027 are heavy, but the structure of the contract gives Washington a clean out after 2026 with a manageable dead cap if things do not work out. That drastically cuts the risk. Washington is not locked into Baker for 3 or 4 years if the down year in coverage in 2025 turns out to be the start of a trend instead of a one-off. Peters can evaluate Baker through 2026, and if Baker's not at the expected level, there is an escape hatch. That kind of flexibility completely changes the risk-reward equation. Wilcox's breakdown also frames it in terms of the divisional arms race. And fam, this part blows my mind. With Baker, the Commanders are genuinely closer to knocking off the Philadelphia Eagles as NFC champs. That is not some wild exaggeration. That is pure roster math. The Eagles are still the team to beat in the NFC East. The offense is dangerous, the quarterback is leveling up, and if Washington wants that crown, the defense needs to be able to do real damage. Putting Baker on the back end next to Nick Cross does more than just upgrade the safety room. It tightens up the communication before the snap. It makes coverage disguises more believable, and it boosts Washington's ability to defend the pass in big money situations. All of that shows up in January when you're trying to steal playoff games on the road. To keep it a buck, this is still a fan-sided prediction, not an Adam Schefter bomb. There is no report that the Cardinals are actively shopping Baker or that the Commanders have an official offer on the table. But the market logic is there. Arizona has incentives to move Baker. Washington has a real need at safety. And the Commanders have the cap space to absorb Baker's deal. The whole path for this trade exists. All that is missing is both teams deciding the timing is right. And fam, I believe the Commanders should make that call right now, this week. Because if Baker hits the trade rumor mill and some other team jumps first, we're going to be stuck talking about what could have been for months. Washington is in a real competitive window right now because of Jaden Daniels. Do not waste that window by staying conservative when it is time to be bold. Adam Peters has been calculated and smart with every move, and that deserves respect. But there are moments where smart aggression is what separates first place from second. Going all in for BUDDA Baker is one of those moments. Fam, that is what we have today. 3 stories, 3 big conversations, and an offseason landscape that is sending a loud message. The Washington Commanders are building something real. Those low-cost secondary signings show you Peters' pragmatic approach. The Tyson situation in the draft is a reminder that not every shiny solution is worth the risk, and that the real smart move sometimes is knowing when to walk away. And the BUDDA Baker rumor, bro, that is the kind of thing that has every Commanders fan in the city lying awake tonight, wide awake and dreaming. This fan base has been waiting for years for Washington to be relevant again, respected again, feared again. And fam, that moment is getting closer. Jaden Daniels is not a fluke. The culture Dan Quinn is building is not a fluke. The decisions Adam Peters is making this offseason are not a fluke. All of it points to a franchise that knows exactly where it wants to go and is willing to make the moves it takes to get there. So drop your comment down below, bro. I want to know, are you pulling the trigger on the BUDDA Baker trade? Do you believe Carnell Tate is the answer with pick 7 in the draft? Or should the Commanders go in a completely different direction? Leave your take, share this video with another Commanders fan who needs to be in this conversation. And if you still have not hit like yet, fam, you already know what to do. Go Commanders. HTT, hail to the franchise.